The rain was falling softly against the windows of a small coffee shop in Portland, Oregon, a place that had become a second home to Emily Carter. She was 27, thoughtful, and carried a gentle sadness in her eyes that never quite went away. Life had not been cruel to her, but it had never been easy either. She was a graphic designer who worked from her apartment, and though she had friends, she often found herself wandering into solitude. The coffee shop was her way of being alone without being lonely. That day, she had her sketchbook open in front of her, the steam of her latte swirling upward like a whisper. She was drawing aimlessly, shading the edges of a figure she wasn't sure she wanted to finish, when the door opened. The chime of the bell above it sounded like any other, but for some reason, it made her lift her head. And there he was, Daniel Hayes. He was tall, with dark hair slightly damp from the rain, and eyes that carried both confidence and vulnerability. He scanned the room as though looking for a place to breathe, and then he noticed her, just briefly. He smiled politely before walking to the counter. She tried not to stare, but she couldn't help but notice the way his presence seemed to shift the air around him. Emily wasn't the kind of woman who fell quickly for strangers, but something about Daniel lingered with her. When he sat 2 tables away, opening a notebook filled with scribbles and lines of writing, she found herself curious. She had always loved observing people, guessing at their stories, imagining what they were hiding behind polite smiles. But this time, she didn't have to imagine for long. The following week, he returned. And then again. By the 4th time, he was no longer just another face in the coffee shop. He was Daniel, the aspiring novelist who wrote best when the rain fell. "Are you always sketching?" he asked her one afternoon, his voice warm, gentle. She looked up, surprised that he was speaking to her. "Most of the time. Helps me think." "Same here," he said, tapping his notebook. "Except I write words instead of lines." It was the start of something small, but powerful. Their conversations grew longer, the space between their tables shrinking until one day they sat together as if it had always been that way. She learned he had moved to Portland recently, after leaving behind a long-term relationship that ended without warning. He carried heartbreak with him, though he hid it well beneath his steady smile. Emily understood heartbreak, too. Her last relationship had left her guarded, convinced that love was something she wasn't built to hold on to. And yet, as the weeks passed, she found herself laughing more when Daniel was around, sharing stories she had locked away for years. One night, when the shop was about to close, they walked out together. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the glow of streetlights. Emily pulled her jacket tighter, and Daniel offered to walk her home. She hesitated for only a moment before agreeing. On that walk, something shifted. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy, charged, like something was about to break open. She could feel his presence beside her, the rhythm of his steps in time with hers, and she wondered if he felt it too. At her door, she turned to say goodbye. But Daniel lingered. His eyes softened as he looked at her, and for a moment, Emily thought he might lean in. Her heart raced, but before anything could happen, she whispered, "Good night," and slipped inside, leaning against the door with her hand on her chest. She told herself it was better that way. Safer. She had learned to stop things before they started, because once they started, she couldn't control how they ended. But life has a way of pulling us toward the things we resist most. Weeks turned into months, and Daniel became woven into her days. They spent afternoons in the coffee shop, evenings walking along the river, and long conversations that stretched into the early hours of morning. The more time she spent with him, the harder it became to deny what she felt. And then it happened. It was a Sunday evening, quiet and calm, when Daniel invited her over to his apartment to read the first few chapters of the novel he was working on. She sat on his couch, listening to the words he had written, and something inside her broke open. His story was about loss, love, and second chances. It felt like he had written it for her, even though she knew he hadn't. When he finished reading, there was silence. She looked at him, and he looked at her, and suddenly the air was too heavy to bear. "I shouldn't," she whispered. But Daniel leaned closer, his voice low and steady. "I don't think I can stop." and neither could she. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as if both of them were afraid of what it meant. But it deepened quickly, filled with months of unspoken words and restrained emotions. Emily felt herself letting go of the walls she had built, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel without fear. Yet afterward, when the night grew still, doubt crept in. She lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, and the old voice in her head returned. The one that told her love was dangerous, that she should have stopped it before it was too late. But it was too late. She was already falling. Days turned into weeks, and their relationship blossomed. Daniel made her feel alive in ways she hadn't thought possible. He encouraged her art, listened to her fears, and held her through her doubts. She began to believe in love again, to see it not as something destined to break, but as something worth the risk. But life, as it often does, tested them. Daniel's ex-girlfriend, Sarah, returned unexpectedly. She wanted closure, but Emily couldn't help but feel threatened. Old insecurities rose inside her, whispering that she wasn't enough, that history would repeat itself. Daniel reassured her, time and again, that he was with her, that his past was behind him. And though Emily tried to believe it, the fear never fully left her. One evening, after an argument sparked by her doubts, Emily walked out of his apartment. The rain was pouring again, just like the night she had first seen him. She stood under the awning, her heart aching, her mind screaming that she should have stopped this from the start. That love was too fragile, too dangerous, too much for someone like her. But then she remembered his words. "I don't think I can stop." And she realized she didn't want to stop either. Emily turned back, drenched from the rain, and when Daniel opened the door, she fell into his arms. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "I tried to stop it, but it was too late. I love you." Daniel held her tightly, his own voice breaking as he said, "It's never too late for us." From that night on, their love was no longer something to resist. It was something to fight for. They weren't perfect. They argued, doubted, stumbled through their fears. But they also grew, healed, and learned to trust in what they had. Love didn't erase the pain of the past, but it gave them the strength to build something new. And in the end, Emily realized that sometimes the things we try hardest to stop are the very things that save us.